Hey guys, welcome back. In this session, we will be learning about the Docker. Before learning the Docker, we'll check what we used to do when before Docker. So, how we will be deploying our application to the servers. All these things we will discuss, and what are the challenges we were facing in traditional deployment. We'll also discuss that. Okay, then we'll see the containerization. Okay, fine. So, let's start. So, traditional deployment. Traditional deployment. See, normally in our olden days, maybe 10 or 15 years back, so to deploy an application in traditional days, you usually need to have the server. You need to set up the server. You need to set up the server. It could be a physical server or it could be a virtual machine. So it could be a physical server or virtual machine. So you need to have a server. So it could be a physical machine or it could be a virtual machine. So the next thing is that you need to have the softwares. You need to have the softwares I need to, or you need to install the softwares which are required to run your application. Okay, so for example, if your application need the dependencies like jars, you need to have these jars as well, of course, right? Every application need jars to run the application. Okay, so we need jars, we need servers, we need server to deploy our application, we need a database to store the data into it. Okay, so these are the softwares which are required. Okay, and next, so once we install the softwares, next what we have to do, we have to configure the memory for this application. So memory should be configured. Memory should be configured. So without memory, where you are going to, store your application related data. Okay, so you need to have memory and you need to configure the networking as well. So of course, networking is the main part, right? So to get the request from the end user, we will be having the network. If you deploy your application, so you'll be deploying on the network itself, right? Okay, so you need a network as well. You need to configure the network as well. Okay, so these are the things you need to do. Okay, once you configure all these things, then what you are going to do? You will be deploying the application. It will be deploying the application into the physical or virtual machine. Physical or virtual machine. So that is physical server or virtual machine. Okay. So now, how you will be deploying? You will be deploying in a jar or war file. You will be deploying it. Okay. So now, here, what are the challenges we are facing in deployment? What are the challenges we are facing during the deployment? So in traditional days, what were the challenges we were facing when we are following this approach actually? Okay, we were following this approach, right? So what are the challenges we were facing it? Okay, so let's see. So traditional deployment. So the traditional deployment is kind of time consuming, is time consuming and is expensive as well. Is expensive as well. And sometimes it may lead to inconsistency. Sometimes it may lead to inconsistency between the environments. Okay, so like environments like development, test, production, so stage, all these environments. Okay, they might be a chance of getting inconsistency between the different environments. Let me explain like what exactly, how we are exactly getting this, inconsistency. So normally in traditional days, software is our softwares are installed and run directly on the physical server. So they will be directly running on the physical server. So this approach will be having the problems like this approach will be having the problems like as you are manually setting up the things, right? Manually setting up the things, as you are manually setting up the things, here you might get problem like while setting up the server or installing the software and configuring any other thing, okay, which could be a time consuming, as I said. So let's take an example. If your application need Java and a database, okay, you would install each manually, okay, and configure the paths and ports, etc., etc. Okay, uh, here the mistakes, the chances of mistakes would be high actually. So it is not easy to track the mistakes actually over here, as you are like manually setting up the things, right? So it is very hard to track the things. The second thing is that inconsistent environment, inconsistent inconsistent environments. Okay, inconsistent environments. Suppose whatever the setup you have done, so that setup will be work on the one machine, or you can say that inconsistent environment in a sense it works on one machine but not on the other machine. Okay, let's take an example. Developer A. Developer A uses Java 11, but the production server has Java 8 only. But the production server has, but the production server is having Java 8. So in this case, definitely the application going to crash. Application is going to crash. Okay, so the developer has written the code in Java 11 and the production server is having only the Java 8. Then the application definitely going to crash. Where it is going to crash? It is going to crash in the production only, because the production will be having the inconsistent or irrelevant or unmatched Java software. Actually, here we have Java in development, we have Java 11 we are using, and in production we are using Java 8 in the sense. So there would be a problem in the production side itself. So the app is going to crash in production. Okay. So next, scaling. Scaling is very hard. Scaling is very hard. So you can say that scaling is very hard. You can like um, yeah. So you can't like scaling is very hard over here. So you can say that like you cannot easily add more servers or the resources when the traffic is increased. Let's take an example of the Amazon sales. Amazon sales. During the Amazon sales, during the Amazon sales, the request or the traffic on the application is high. At this time, what they have to do, so let's say the Amazon is deployed into the one server. Okay, Amazon is deployed. Amazon is deployed in a server, one server, like server one. Okay, so due to the high traffic on the server one, this server one might get, uh, you know, um, crashed out, because the server one will accept only the request. Let's say, for example, the server one will accept only uh, 1 lakh request per second. So if it is like exceeding more than 1 lakh request per second, so then the Amazon server definitely it is going to crash. So what you have to do, you have to set up the manual, you have to again set up the things. and you have to install the software, sir. Then you have to deploy your application into the server too. So which is kind of time consuming, Amazon, which is kind of time consuming, which is kind of time consuming. So now here I have installed server 2. Again, if the traffic is increased, so then what you have to do? Then you have to deploy, then you have to set up the server. You have to deploy your all the softwares like jar, server, and databases, all those things you have to, uh, you know, uh, deploy, add it or install it to your machine. Then you can deploy the application into the server. Okay, so it is kind of like manually doing. It's kind of like time consuming process. So this is also one of the disadvantage we have. So now the other is difficult to the other disadvantage is difficult to roll back. So if we have any changes, like it is very difficult to roll back. Let's say, for example, we have, um, let's say if we have multiple versions, let's say we have a V1, V2, okay, V1, V2 versions. V1 is a old version which were like running successfully in the Tomcat server. Okay, so now V2 is the new version which we have introduced. Okay, so now this, if the V2 version crashes, it is difficult to go back to the V1 server. Again, we have to in a delete, we have to take out the V2 server, V2 application, V2 version application from the server. We have to deploy the V1. So once the V1 is up, then only we can able to access the application. So it is very difficult to roll back the things. Okay, and downtime, downtime, downtime during the deployment. Downtime during the deployment. Okay, downtime during the deployment. So the problem over here is, when you are updating the application, so it often requires, application often requires like, stopping the service. Okay. Mm, like you can say that, for example, you might be seeing some sites throwing an exception like, sorry, we are under maintenance, kind of messages you will be seeing, right? So all these messages will you can see only when the application is down. Okay, so these are the some of the challenges we were facing in the traditional deployment. Okay, so in this session, we have discussed the traditional deployment and the challenges we were facing in the traditional deployment. In the next session, we will be learning about the how we are overcoming the challenges of this traditional deployment. So, what are the things we are going to use it? So, in the next lesson, we will be going to learn that. Thank you for watching.